I'm your host, Donna Cates, and each week we'll dive into powerful stories, expert strategies, and practical tools to help you take charge of your financial future. Whether you're planning for retirement, navigating a divorce, or simply looking to build your wealth with confidence, this is your space to grow, learn, and thrive. Let's get started with today's podcast. Hello, everybody. Donna Cates here, and I'm excited to introduce you to Bridget Meadows. She is the owner of Bridget Meadows Coaching. And Bridget, I'm delighted to have you today, and I'm eager to delve deep into what it is you do, your career journey, and why you got into it. So, give us that quick overview of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. I really appreciate being able to be here. So, I am a life coach and an expert in change management. My focus is to help women enjoy their work, which sounds really simple, but it is often not. We spend so much time at our workplaces, and when we enjoy what we do, we know if we've been lucky enough to have one of those kinds of jobs that we love, it spills over into just the rest of our sort of life happiness and makes our lives so fulfilling. And so those of us that are lucky enough to have that, when it gets lost or it gets wandered away because of things that change, either we change or our environment changes or our leadership changes, we end up in roles that no longer suit us and or environments that no longer suit us. Anything on the spectrum of unpleasant to truly very toxic and bad for us. And so there's this epidemic of folks who don't love what they do and have talked themselves into staying because of very real needs, very real things like money and time and options and things they need. So I have been in that situation and I walked away from a career in order to start my own business. And that's not the answer for everybody, but because I have been through that journey, that's why my coaching focuses on helping people with that as well. But really, the crux of it is getting people back to doing something that they love, that's aligned with their values, and making, a plan to get there that isn't full of risk or fear.
Oh, I love it. So, and I have to tell you, just literally before we got on for today's conversation, I was struggling with technology, and I'm
Mm.
sitting here going, "Why does this job have to be so hard?" And I love my job, but oh my God, I hate technology. I was having that conversation with myself, but it's just a small portion. So I
Right.
pulled up my big girl britches and said, "I'm going to be okay with it." So
Yeah.
but I'm very curious. Share with us a little bit about, as much personal as you want to, what was going on in your previous career that gave you that desire to make that pivot.
Yeah, so it happened really kind of a long time. I had a successful career, and I still look at it as a successful career. My background was in science, specifically in food science, and I did a lot of really exciting and fun work in food quality, food innovation, for almost 20 years. And I rose through a number of roles in quality, regulatory, and new product development, eventually leading some really large teams and some really big brands. But as I sort of achieved those higher levels of jobs that I was looking for, I was just feeling very disconnected from the industry. The industry started to drift into places that were not always based in science. There's a lot of misconception around food, and so that to me was difficult to navigate, as well as sometimes the leadership and I weren't always aligned, and it just became one of these things where it was like, gosh, I love what I do, and also I don't love what I do. The environment had shifted enough that it just wasn't a good fit for me, but the things that I loved, I wanted to keep helping people. I had great teams, and I really hadn't been doing any of the science myself for probably a better part of a decade because I had been leading the science teams and doing things like
Mhm.
strategy and helping people get problems out of their way and breaking the big things down into manageable pieces. So all of that kind of informed my coaching. But yeah, I just got to a point where it was like suddenly my intuition was sort of screaming at me like, you can't do this anymore, you're going to burn out if you haven't already. Just the world and myself just changed so much, and in ways that didn't necessarily line up with, oh yeah, staying where you are is the right move. But the one piece of advice I got at that moment that sort of changed everything was that the people who are happiest in their careers look at their career path as an experiment, not an identity.
Ooh, I love that.
Right. That was such a juicy thought. I was just like, oh, I love that so much. And especially with a science background, it really opened up possibilities that I had not considered before to say, oh, I can go experiment with this. I have this freedom to go look. And when you experiment and you're trying things on purpose, you're learning, you're never failing. It's working or it's not. And so it's like, and then you shift. And that was really eye-opening for me to say, oh yeah, okay. Instead of I'm a scientist, to say, no, I'm a woman who is looking for jobs that fit what she wants to do. I'm a woman who likes to solve problems. I'm a woman who likes to work with people. I really enjoy enjoying my time. I want to do something that's enjoyable. And so pulling together sort of those values into a coaching business was 100% the right move for me. And I've been doing it now for about a year, and it's really been a wonderful shift. I feel just so different having been able to make this pivot.
Well, and I have to say, of course, I did not know you pre-pivot, but I can say that right now your energy and joy shines through.
Right. You can feel those things, that intuition, learning to hear that intuition um, was something very new for me. And once you sort of learn something like that, learn a skill like that, you just can't unlearn it. You can't just stop listening to it. Right. So, yeah, that's something I work with my clients with a lot as well.
And I know that they probably appreciate having someone like you then that can help them say it's okay to feel this and to take action on it.
Right. Yeah.
Because
Our feelings we can't help our feelings, but we can learn to put them in perspective and come up with plans to work with them, not against them.
mhm,
And, no one makes good decisions from a place of fear and stress. So
mhm.
getting yourself back to a place of, calm and thoughtfulness and curiosity is a great place to be making decisions and seeking change from.
And I'm going to take away from this, and I've literally made a note of it, the looking at my career as an experiment. That really resonates with me. So thanks for
Yeah,
sharing that.
absolutely.
I'd love to learn more about what you see currently as the biggest problem in your industry and how you're working to solve that.
I mean, really, I think one of the biggest problems for me, and I'm relatively new to the industry, but I just don't think enough people are considering coaching. I just think there's a lot of misconception around what do coaches do, and that's not really for me. It's something that a CEO does, or that's something that somebody does in an executive environment where they spend a bunch of money because somebody is, underperforming. They bring in a coach to help fix them. And I think maybe people consider it as like, oh, a coach is for somebody who doesn't know how to do something themselves. So especially for
Mhm.
women, because we are all so capable and we get things done all the time. The idea of needing help to get something done is almost a little bit insulting because, of course, I can get this done. I can figure it out myself. Women are like the ultimate DIYers. But the point of a coach to me that I want to get across to people is not necessarily that you can't figure it out. I fully believe you can. And in fact, I'm going to rely on you to figure it out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you figure it out faster. We're going to be more efficient. We're going to lower your stress and your number of sleepless nights of dealing with how am I going to change this? And we're going to make it easier and more enjoyable along the way. So that's my real goal with it. And, this, I focus on, career happiness, but there are coaches for everything. There are coaches for divorce and for parenting and things like sex and relationships. And so there's just so much potential for having a partner who has your back and is willing to sort of help you and be that, angel or devil on your shoulder, maybe a little bit of both, to help
Mhm.
you through those processes just with more ease. And I feel like everyone in their lifetime deserves to have a really good therapist and a really good coach on their side.
Well, and that's perfect because I was just feeling that it's kind of like when people talk about therapy, going to therapy, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like the need. And I don't know, in our culture, just kind of the shame around it that still kind of permeates our environment.
Mhm.
But I think, the realizing that a coach is not there to fix anything, but to
Right.
help guide you, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a very real difference. I always want to make the distinction between coaching and therapy. Therapy is super important and I support it fully. And it is for helping people deal with feelings and trauma and process their past and understand why things went the way they did. Coaching is different in that it looks forward in terms of what are the action steps I can take to now that therapy really helps you know yourself and coaching
Okay.
helps you make a plan to look forward.
Hmm.
So the two are very complementary to each other.
That's
And it's always
awesome.
something I watch out for. I'm like, I can't help you. I can't help you with that trauma, but I can certainly help you with knowing you have that, knowing what's up, and how can we now think about your future and what feels comfortable for you based on things you're,
Mm.
worried about or risks you're willing to take or not, or even how can we take some of those risks and make them feel smaller.
Right. And I think it's so vital that we have to acknowledge the baggage that we come with,
Oh yeah.
but we don't have to let the baggage hold us down. And that's where that forward focus is so empowering, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Well, tell me this, what makes you unique? And especially since this is a new gig for you, what's going to make you unique in the way that you're helping others?
Yeah, no, I love this question. I actually thought about this question for a while because you did share it with me beforehand, so I appreciate that. But
Mhm.
everybody is unique because they bring their own experiences to the table. But for me, I kind of laugh the idea that I've been a life coach for a year because probably 2 or 3 years ago I would have said that's a made up job. Like I'm a self help skeptic that is now doing self-help as a career, which is kind of wild to me. But I'm just a natural skeptic, I think, because of my science background. Um, and I find a lot of unhealthy sort of noise out in the self-help industry. People who are like, you can magic yourself into certain situations, or we can manifest things from the stars or whatever. And if you're into manifesting, that's fine. My version of manifesting is going to look like, what do you want? Do you believe it's possible? What are the things that could get in your way? And put in a process in place to get those things out of your way. So I lean on a lot of evidence-based tools around like getting your brain calm, things in neuroscience and mindfulness. Not mindfulness in a like I believe in all the positivity, but mindfulness in no, I really can replace my thoughts with something that helps me better. And we can do that using evidence-based methods and processes and tools that I have gathered over a 20-year corporate career that really do bring change to life without risk. And now I'm just doing that with people instead of products and brands and changes in manufacturing environments, things like that. So it's been a real I think, twist on the coaching experience to focus a little bit on that intuition that I discovered of my own, as well as having a foot firmly in that world of, these are pragmatic, practical tools that are proven to work in so many different scenarios.
And I can't help but to imagine that you're going to have so much more joy in working with people versus products.
Yeah. I
I,
mean, working with people was always the best part of my previous jobs anyway. It was nice to see a product hit the shelf, but it was never nearly as fulfilling as seeing a person on my team get the kudos they deserved or being
Mhm.
promoted or
Mhm.
helping them through a problem and they come out on the other side happier. I love that. That is the
Mhm.
stuff. That is the stuff that I get out of bed for. So,
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, I see a lot of that in your future. So tell me, where do you see the industry going, and that being kind of the coaching industry
right.
over the next 5 to 10 years? And what are you doing to stay on top of that?
Yeah, I hope that what will happen in our industry is going to be more access for people as it grows. Just like therapy went from being like a little bit stigmatized to being more open now, I hope
Mhm.
coaching goes in this similar direction. And so I hope to see growth in like accessibility and people having access to it. It's not just, CEOs who can do these things, that we remove some barriers to access so that good coaches are available to everybody who might be struggling with a problem. And so
Mhm.
for me, I'm working on creating some like sliding scale programs and things like that so that I can help provide a kickstart for people to go down that new path or to have a specific decision they might be struggling with. I have 1 hour decision session that is a money back guarantee. That's an easy one to be like, if you're struggling with this one topic and need to make a decision, we can do that at very low risk. And so that's the kind of thing that I see in terms of the industry itself. And I hope that that continues to grow, because coaching was life changing for me. And so I really want to see the impact it can have on other people.
Right, and making it more accessible. So for me, I think as an entrepreneur myself, I look at it, okay, this is money I'm going to have to spend on myself, and I'm curious to know if businesses are using or actually offering this as a benefit to their workers, their employees.
Yes, I actually did do some work this year within a company's learning and development budget. I knew the people individually who wanted to reach out to me, but they submitted it through their company's learning and development because it was a flexible policy that was like, hey, we have this much money for you to take a class or take a certification or go to a conference or do whatever, and they chose to get a few coaching sessions.
Wow.
And I think those were some folks who might not have had access to do that with their personal budget. And so I
Mhm.
loved that for them. And we talked through, some things in their work lives and some things in their home lives. And I hope that they're, happy that with some of the changes we were able to make and some of the mindset shifts we were able to do.
Gosh, that's awesome, and that's a huge market opportunity there
Yeah.
for you because there's not a lot of that going on, I'm sure. So let's shift gears. I want you to share with us the biggest challenge that you've experienced thus far in your life, whether it's personal or professional, and how that has shaped the way that you're doing business today.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of already talked about this a little bit, I think, because really I think my biggest challenge was learning to listen to my own intuition. And it took some very big changes in the world and in my life to have that happen. Um, I was feeling really disconnected at work. And I had a very good friend die suddenly. He was in his
Mhm.
late 40s. And that was just shocking. It was just that moment. And it all just came crashing together of, it's too short. It's too short to be miserable. It's too short to accept less than you deserve. It's just so precious and fleeting. Like, what can I do to make it better?
Mhm.
And it's that to me was a very large challenge because it really has just been that idea that I had all this sunk cost ideas, right? I just posted about this on my LinkedIn this week, that the sunk cost fallacy holds people back. I've put all this time into this career and I've put all this time in with this company, and like I just have to stay. And yeah, there's reasons to stay, but eventually, if you can make a plan to shift those things that are not working for you, I'm not saying everybody has the privilege to just quit their job tomorrow and hire a coach and then, everything's hunky dory. You have to make a strategic plan and be smart. I'm realistic about that. Most people do not have the privilege to just walk away from work.
Right.
So we're looking at like, how can we make a plan that works for your scenario?
Well, that's
Um,
where having that coach is so important because
yes.
we don't even know where to go or what to do. So
That's
you're
where we
helping
start with.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we start when I start working with a client. We start with, what is their current situation and what do they think is holding them back? What would they like to do? What would they do if nothing was holding them back? And it's really difficult for them to say those things because they believe those things are real. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But it really does inform kind of the way that I work with them to make sure that it's not just oh, you do this, so naturally I think you should do this. That's not my role as a coach. And great example of this is a current client I have who um, originally came to me because they were worried about their industry and didn't feel like it was sustainable for them to stay in, and they really wanted to exit the industry and shift into a different area quickly. So we started working together. The industry stabilized more than they feared, and what they are doing now is actually they're working on writing a book, because what had happened, and that seems like such a huge jump, but what had happened was they had gotten disconnected from their personal value of growth and learning and doing new things, and they weren't able to do that in their role. And so that, and that made that role feel even more unstable when there were blips in the environment. Now they've decided to stay in their role, but they are happier about it because it feels like a choice, not being stuck. And they're putting a lot of energy towards getting some other thoughts out, writing this book, and have more of a long-term plan for how do they shift their story, and not like, I got to quit right now and go jump into something else. They're shifting their story and really enjoying the ride as they get these thoughts out and write these thoughts down. And so I never expected it would go there, but it was their intuition that took us there. And it was like, well, what if you tried that? Why wouldn't you try that? And when they did, they just lit up. So it was lovely.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps. That's awesome, right? How exciting. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that experience with us. Let me ask you this. If you could have lunch with any person, living or deceased, who would you choose and why?
I would choose my late grandmother, Jean. Grandma Jean was my favorite person on the entire planet. She was just delightful. And this question made me think. She used to have lunches with people. She died in 2017, so it was not that long ago. And she lived, I think she was almost 90 when she passed away. She had 6 children, 15 grandchildren, and 5 great grandchildren when she passed away. So a life well lived. And there have since been more great grandchildren since then. But she would love to take, well, love might not be the right word. She would take people out to lunch one-on-one if they were maybe messing up a little bit. They were struggling with the job or not doing so hot in school or making a bad financial decision. Grandma Jean would invite you to lunch, and you would have lunch and hear a little bit about what needed to happen, not so subtly. I loved that. And I actually never got invited to a you've done wrong Grandma Jean lunch. So, I'm not looking for one of those come to Jesus meetings, but I would love to just sit with her and tell her what's going on and just hear her thoughts. And she was just such a delightful lady. So yeah, that's definitely who I'd pick.
Well, and you're not the first person that I've asked that question of that has said grandmother. So grandmothers are really important in our lives, I
They're
believe.
so special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think, for you, what I can imagine right now, because you were never invited to that type of lunch meeting, that now it would just be all the wonderful things that are happening and what's coming for you. I can feel that too. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I would love for you to share with our community what's the best way for them to connect with you if they'd like to work with you or learn more about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm very active on LinkedIn, of course, because I am a coach who specializes in career happiness, and that can include career change and career pivots, although it doesn't have to. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, just Bridget Archibald Meadows, and on Instagram, and as well as my website, which is just bridgetmeadowscoaching.com. So Bridget Meadows Coaching, you can Google me and I'm come up right away. And email, DMs, anywhere you want to follow me on social media. I'm active everywhere.
Okay. And you can work with anybody throughout the US.
That's correct.
Okay, that is fabulous. Well, thank you so much for being a guest today. I really enjoyed getting to learn more about you.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be on here. I love the work you do.
Thank you. I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, informed, and ready to take the next step in your financial journey. Remember, building wealth isn't just about money, it's also about creating a life that aligns with your goals and values. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the women in your life who deserve financial empowerment too. Until next time, stay confident, stay empowered, and keep building the life you desire.